Evening, everybody. Pete Morse. This is the ComancheZOOM for June 3rd. And the topic tonight, for those that have not seen the announcements, is here. We're going to have some time with John Bryerson talking about the Piper Museum. This is getting ready for the Piper, the gathering that they always do at the Piper plant in Lock Haven. It's the last week of the month, I believe, the last full week of the month is what's going on. The Sentimental Journey is what they call it. And then we're also going to talk about something new that we've come up with, which is a virtual inspection that we did with Matt Kurke inspecting Will Carpenter's Comanche. The Comanche was in North Carolina. Will Carpenter is wherever he was at his base, and Matt was in Florida. And we inspected the Comanche to make sure that the gear would put together correctly, and found a bunch of things that Matt was not particularly happy with. Not bad things, but things that needed to be fixed. And you'll find it's going to be very worthwhile. That is a ComancheZOOM now, so you can see it. But right now, this is going to be the intro for it. And we got a lot of other interesting stuff going on. So with that, I will get out of the ComancheZOOM here. The share. And you move back to our normal who you are, where you are, and what you fly. So check in, key your mic and check in.
Dan Homiser, Kenosha, Wisconsin, a 1960 Comanche 250.
Dan, welcome and good to see you. And your 250.
I'm Pete Morse. I have a 250 also out in Connecticut. And right now I'm visiting my daughter in Seattle, which is a long way from Connecticut.
I'm Ray
TJ.
from
Go,
Madison,
Ray.
Wisconsin, and I'm flying a 260B model.
Ray, good to see you as always, and welcome.
Thank
And I'm CJ Stump from Vermont, flying either a 180 or a 260B. Glad to be here.
Fred Hofstetter, just recently moved to Bernie, Texas. My bird's still back in California, but it's a PA 24 1959 250.
Fred, good to see you. Good to have you in. When are you and your bird getting reunited?
A month or so, probably. No hangers down here.
You know, it's tough to be apart, but it makes the reuniting all the sweeter. Welcome and good to have you.
Thank you.
Anybody else, key your mic and check in. Hold down the space bar. That's the easiest way to do it.
Ernie James, Southern California, 65 260.
Ernie, good to see you. Welcome here this evening. Should be an interesting one. And everybody just jump into any quiet moment, say who you are, where you are, and what you fly. You guys are going to be shy. I'm about to start calling on you.
Derek Jenkins from Manitoba, Canada, 1961 250. Had it for 3 years now.
Derek, good to have you in, and welcome from Canada. How is the lockdown there? Is it starting to soften up, or is it just as intense as ever?
Manitoba we're pretty serious in the third wave. Like they've locked down again pretty bad. But I'm in a small farm town, so we're not. I don't have a whole lot of contacts, so I just say between the house in town and the farm and the hangar. So.
Well, I hope it ends soon. This is quite the period.
I just flew from Connecticut to Seattle commercially, and all of the airports require masks at all times, and all of the aircraft, when you're on the aircraft, require masks at all times. Other than that, it's relatively open.
Is that all? Yeah, it's definitely getting a little crazy. And my hospital director said that they're, although they have a good relationship with the governor of the state in terms of when some kind of directive comes down that doesn't have anything to do with medical reality, that they are just flying blind.
Well, Manitoba's been shipping some ICU patients to other provinces because their capacity is overstretched here.
Oh, man. Well, anybody else? Sorry to put the sobering stuff in.
Yeah.
See who you are, where you are, and what you fly. Jump in.
Martin from Grand Prairie, Texas, with a 260B 1965.
Martin, good to have you in. Good to see you.
Thank you.
How's your temperatures there?
Well, they're unseasonably cool, to be honest, because normally this time of year we're straight over 100 days, over 100 degrees. But I don't know what the temperature is today, but I'm thinking it's probably only about 80, which is ridiculously cool for this time of the year. But we're not complaining.
That is a blessing. One thing that I wanted to, that makes me very happy about what you said is that we had tentatively scheduled the work of a couple of Comanche owners on 2 different air conditioning options. And if you're having unseasonably cool weather, then I'm just as happy we're talking about those in 2 weeks instead of this week. But they're coming. They should be great, and they're not going to be nearly as expensive as most of what's out there.
It's 107 in Yucca Valley today.
Oh, man.
Wow.
Yikes. And how are you doing?
I'm in an air-conditioned car and office. But no, we fly, because of the heat out here, we fly at 7 in the morning. We're back by 10 usually.
Yeah. It's well, one thing that's interesting is John Bryerson, the head of the Piper Museum, who will be speaking later, as we were getting ready to do this, mentioned that he had spent 2,000 hours flying in the back of various Piper Lock Haven built aircraft working on cooling. And part of the reason that conversation came up was the desire to get the Knots to You or Eagle Cowl back in production.
Is it my imagination, or has Knots to You just hugely in the past few years expanded the stuff that they make for the Comanche and other planes?
What do you all think? I think there's more stuff available, but less stuff that's specific to us.
Yeah, in general, there's a lot of, well, it used to be just the speed. Well, about 10 years ago, seemed like it was just the speed mods, at least for the Comanche. That's the stuff I would look at. But now, as a matter of today, I looked at and there's just interior parts and window frames and just all kinds of different things for inside and outside, not just the speed mods. And I was looking at, it seems like they're just expanding like crazy.
Wow.
Which is
That
nice.
is a good thing.
Right next door to me, so.
Yeah. Well, the main thing is that we have parts available.
Yeah.
So that's a blessing.
I think also they discovered, generally, the industry has discovered that us Comanche guys are making our birds better. We're not just sitting around letting them rust.
Exactly. Yep, we've become a target market, and that is a really good thing because it means that we are not going to be the last ones to get an STC for something we really need. Well, everybody jump into any quiet moment, say who you are.
I'll jump in. This is Margie Leggett, and I have a Comanche 250, and I'm in Tri-Cities, Washington. And yesterday it was 104 degrees. Today I think it's down to 100 today, so it's cooling off.
Oh my, down to 100. Margie, good to see you and welcome. And
Gonna have to
I'm
put
looking
the
forward to
heaters-
working with you. Oh, go ahead.
Turn the heaters back on at 100. With respect to making parts, are you going to have an update on where we are with the trunnions or side braces, things we've talked about in the past?
That's a good question. Was that Ernie asking?
Yeah,
That was.
Yeah, so we can do that. We don't have, we actually do have some news to report. I'll be really brief just because we're actually working really hard to get quite a large parts team organized. And part of the reason for asking Will to talk about what just happened with Matt is that some of our ability to support ourselves involves getting a list together of various types of expertise that we as a community can tap. And so we've been pulling together an increasingly large list of DERs, DARs, engineers, people who have the ability or knowledge to do PMA, parts manufacturing authorization, and people who have experience getting field approvals and STCs. So that's, that's kind of the short story on that. And then Kristen Winter and Hans Newbert are in the final stages of getting the aileron nose rib done, because that was an unobtainium part, so that AD can be complied with easily and not too expensively. Strut housings, there's actually a very interesting conversation that, I think the strut housings is going to be its own topic, because if you've ever looked in the IPC, the parts catalog, and you can go to docs.northeastcomanche.org, and multiple generations of parts catalogs and service manuals are there, along with all of the ADs and service letters and service bulletins and other fun, cool things like autopilot manuals. And if you look at it, you'll see that pretty much every year has a different part number for the strut housing. And if you actually look at actual strut housings, they have the part number stamped into them. And then there's this enormously complicated series of references where you have these individual letters. Like if you're an A, then it might apply to a 1965, 260. But in reality, all strut housings are interchangeable. And the only differences in the terms of the tube dimension is the bushings. Just confirmed that with Zach Grant yesterday. So the odd thing is that the later models, which you would think would be heavier, are pretty much the only ones. Cliff Waluski was saying the later ones, which you would think would be heavier, are also the only ones showing that cracking in the web. And yet the airplanes are not that much heavier. If you look at the max gross on the 260 versus a 250, it went up by 100 pounds, and then the B went up another 100 pounds. So we're talking about a couple of 100 pounds, not 500 or 1,000 pounds for the heavier strut housing. So there's some engineering going on to determine whether that, what that means. Does that sort of make any sense? Because here you have what should be a different part number of the heavier strut housing, and yet why are we only seeing the web cracking there?
some of the difference is in the stress levels that those housings see with the newer versions of the Comanche that are a little bit higher weight. They also land a little bit higher speed generally, and that puts more stress on the gear.
CJ, this
Yes,
is Jimmy.
go ahead. Jimmy,
Look,
hey, there you
yeah.
are. What I just said.
I'm
came out
glad
of
you
Jimmy.
mentioned that, because I still been looking, and so what I basically came up, we talked about that night, is basically correct.
Yep.
Mhm. Well, one thing that I talked to a friend of mine, when I was in engineering back in the 60s, we did everything with a slide ruler. Then by the time
Yep.
70s came along, you had some computers. I'm wondering if there wasn't a little difference in that, because we were told to add 12 to 20% to whatever we figured back then. So
Right.
you think I'm correct on this?
I do. I checked with John Bryerson, who was the Piper engineer for the B models, by the way, and he said that they are forged, not cast.
Yeah.
Because Piper wanted the strength and lightness of a forged part. And the parts manual also refers to it being forged. So that's helpful because now we have a sense as to the strength of the material.
Yeah, I looked up several and I just found out today which ones the latest PA 39s had on. And but I still think the ones that I said it seems like they didn't have any problems with them back in that time. And when I talked to Cliff, he talked like the 180s. He never saw a crack in a 180.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what
the
I was
180s gross is right. But the 180 gross is 25.50, right? And then and that is a big difference between the 180s and the 250s. But the big thing that you were pointing out is that the 250s and the earlier 260s don't seem to be seeing these.
Yes.
Unless there's a really traumatic thing that may have happened to them, whereas the Cs and the twins, which have the heavier strut housing, there's a question as to whether it's more common there. So it's an interesting question. I think the team is coming together.
One of the things that Matt brought up when he was doing an inspection was that the hole that is in that strut housing flange needs to be chamfered to reduce the stress and polished on the backside. So, you know, that may be part of the difference.
Absolutely.
Well, I talked to a friend of mine. He told me, he said, he could make them. He just didn't know exactly what all it would be involved. But, you know, he was talking about making them out of a solid round stock. But he said it'd have to have at least a 4 axis to do it with. Of course, he's got it.
Isn't there somebody out there that makes a CNC trunnion?
Well, this friend of mine does the molds for Nike tennis shoes. And I will talk to him about it, and he said it's possible to make it. He looked one up and he said, yeah, I think I can make it with my machines. So I'm going by that. I hadn't really seen him and talked to him consistently. I finally called him and found out.
Maybe Jim Peters down in Australia, maybe he can answer that. Isn't there some effort, or at least maybe even a possible part for a trunnion from the Australian?
Yep, there is a part.
What I understand is it's $7,000 to $8,000 a piece.
About right.
Jim,
I had heard 7,000 a piece.
Jim,
correct.
You need to unmute. Jim Peters, you need to unmute.
What I was going to try to do is get a hold of a set of blueprints. I just didn't know exactly which ones to ask for. And I finally decided the one off the 260B and the 400. But CJ and I never talked again, so I have not called to see if I could get a hold of them.
Yep. And Jimmy, that was my bad. It has been a madness. I had a big accident and I've been looking for a replacement car and getting better.
Accident? What happened?
No, I was coming uphill, getting ready to turn left into a place, and a woman was coming downhill. And as far as I know, she was trying to avoid people pulling out, and I was in the center lane, and she had the sun in her eyes, and we had an unfortunate meeting at high speed.
Well, just be thankful you're above ground and breathing.
Exactly.
Well, you think the ones that we talked about, the blueprints, I should try to get?
Yes. No, I think we're going to be doing. It may make sense to request 2 of them, Jimmy. What do you think?
That's the reason I hadn't done anything.
Yep.
Because this is going to be like a 1 or 2 shot deal, and I won't get what I want, what we need when I go for it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. Perfect. Yep. And I think it's time to get Cliff and Zach and a couple of and Hans and possibly one or two other people, including an AMPIA with a very, very brand new deep CNC milling machine.
Yes.
And a scan of the twin strut housing already in hand, laser scan 3D into the room.
Well, the strut housing for the later PA 39s are 27053-000 and then 001. That's the two housings.
Yep.
So, like I say, we won't get the right one.
Yes. Exactly. Exactly. And that's where I really think that Hans Newbert, who is an FAA DER with the correct approvals,
Yes.
and an interest in the area, is going to be so vital. And then I just want to recognize and welcome John Bryerson. John's in the room with us now, and welcome, John. Just a reminder that your space bar will usually unmute. And John is joining us tonight. And the part of the reason he's such a special guest is that he is the head of the Piper Museum at Lock Haven. He's also a former engineer for Piper. He worked on the Comanches, on the B models in particular. He also is the only person that I know of that actually headed a successful type certification project and got a whole new type approved under Part 23. He spent 2,000 hours. I'm going to be saying this again in a few minutes, but John, it's just a pleasure to have you. I wanted to say a quick hello, welcome. Glad to have you in. And make sure you're able to unmute and talk. John, your space bar will do it on most computers. And if you're on an iPad or an iPhone, you'll want to touch your screen and then look for the little microphone and tap that. And
Got it. How about you hear me?
great.
You did.
Yeah, loud and clear.
Okay.
And
Thanks for
reverse-
being here with us tonight, John.
Yeah, reverse the
Okay,
process
well,
and
I'm
you're
on
on.
standby.
Yep. Yeah, what Pete said. If you're looking for a quiet moment, just undo it.
I'm all set.
Bingo.
Brilliant.
Good. We got 7 minutes or so before we're going to start the presentation stuff. So again, key your mic, tell them who you are, where you are, and what you fly. Go ahead and check in.
Hey everybody, Pat Lee here. I've got the Comanche 260 up here at Osceola, Wisconsin. And we just flew around a little bit this weekend, went down to Tennessee, came back. She did beautiful. And here's a good one for everybody. We went from here to Kingsport, Tennessee. It was a 5-hour flight down, 5-hour flight back, and didn't even use a quart of oil. And that was pretty awesome.
That is pretty awesome. Welcome, Pat. Good to see you here, and always nice to know your bird is operating that well and that effectively.
Hey, also too, question for you guys. I have no video of anybody. Is it on my end or did I screw up on something?
That would be on your end. So you should be able to see video.
Okay, I'm gonna tap out and then come back in.
Okay.
Excellent.
Okay.
And anybody else, just jump in any quiet moments, say who you are, where you are, and what you fly.
John
Jump
Putter.
in. Go ahead.
John Putter, RMS, 9317 Pop, 1969 260C. And a quick thank you to John Bryerson when I had gone through the museum a couple of years ago, and we had a nice discussion about picos on 260Cs as they were being made.
Hail fellow, well met.
Rich Bergman here, 67 260B, El Cajon, California, Gillespie Field. And a question that I have for the group, and I'll just throw it out there. Has anybody done any experimentation or any even looking into putting stall strips on the forward part of a wing on a 260?
And now we need about 5. All right, how will all this play out? Let's see.
That is a great question. Anybody have an answer for Rich? Rich, welcome. Good to see you. And has anybody put stall strips on a single?
Phrase, you have 10 seconds. Good one.
That is a good one.
I have experience with stall strips on a Glasair 1RG. That thing had a roll rate of 560 degrees and stick and rudder. And the only thing I can say is what a crotch rocket. And boy, was it fun to fly at 300 miles an hour. So the guy wouldn't sell it to me, and I never looked back at another non-retract, and I went to a Comanche, and there you go. But I wonder if anybody's ever done that, and it would be interesting to know.
You know, they're common on the twins, and I just don't know. Does anybody have the Pete Morse? Did you, on your previous Comanche, which had the short takeoff and landing kit, did you have that?
No, I did not. It was, all I had was the chips.
It'll say weight and up is 150, and then you adjust a little bit. Effort level, it comes at a certain point.
Gotcha. And we have a stuck mic. See if we can find that. Thanks. All right. And anybody, welcome everybody, and jump into any quiet moment, say who you are, where you are, and what you fly.
Andy Martin, based in Waterloo, Ontario, I fly a Comanche 180, 1960 model.
Cool.
Welcome from Ontario, and love the 180s.
I am Dave Shaver. I'm still Dave Shaver. I'm still flying 260, 65 out of Martin State down in Baltimore, and I'm still not any prettier.
Dave Shaver, glad to have you. Welcome back, and thanks for being part of us.
Good evening there. This is Pat Lee Sr. and I fly with my son with his 260, and we have a heck of a good time with it. Glad to be with you folks tonight.
Pat Lee Sr., it is an honor to have you and your very fine son with us. I have to say that that was one heck of a cookout you guys put on, and having the ASOS changed to particularly welcome the Piper Comanche was a fabulous touch that I think you and Bill Kniff cooked up. So kudos to you all.
Oh, thank you.
And anybody else? Any quiet moment? Who you are? What you fly?
Yeah, Alan Cheek down here in Peachtree City, Georgia. I don't know how to make my screen pop up, but anyways, I've got a 63 Comanche 250 that's currently at Webco, and I just got the word from John, my gear 1,000-hour gear AD is all done, and it was less than $3 grand.
Alan, you just made a whole bunch of people's day.
Okay.
Thank you for letting people know.
Now I will quantify that. I guess probably at least 10 years ago, I had new gear conduits put in with Matt Kurke and the wiring harness. And I asked John specifically, I said, hey, really go over the motor and the transmission, because, I don't really care what it costs. If you want to send it down to Matt, that'd be great. I mean, not that money is no object, but money is no object, if you know what I mean. I want it to be perfect for the next 1,000 hours. And he said, no, it's all fine. But by the way, we do that here too at Webco. We overhaul the motor and transmission. But anyway, so my good friend Dave Donan in his 59 Comanche 250, we're going to go fly up to Newton, Kansas on Sunday, and we'll pick up my airplane on Monday. So
you're even plane pooling with another Comanche driver.
I'm
which is
plane
perfect.
pooling with another Comanche guy. Yeah.
Well, welcome, and thanks for letting us know about the 1,000-hour gear AD. How much time did it take
You know, when I dropped it off, because out to Webco, you know, John just basically said it's going to take 8 hours per gear. So figure, you know, $3,000, more or less. And then I don't know what Matt would charge to do to rebuild a gear and a transmission. I'm assuming, I think Dave said when he did his, it was about 4. So if you had to buy, you know, so again, so 3, 4 there, you're at 7. If you had to buy new gear conduits, you know, that's, I don't even know what they are nowadays, $850, $1,000. So 7, 8, 9, you know, it could easily be $9,000, $10,000, $12,000 if you just never ever bothered to keep up with your gear, you know, and now all of a sudden it just needs a total everything, you know. But if you've kept up with it and all that thing, I think John just said, yeah, I needed a couple of bolts and bushings and that's about it, and a look over. So anyways.
Yeah. Well, the reason I'm happy you brought that up, even though we're usually trying to hanger fly, is that it's a lot of people have been worried, like, oh my goodness, how much does this thing cost? You know, with all sorts of prices being put out there. Webco is one of the very best shops in the country. They know the stuff. And in a situation like yours, where it was a pretty routine disassembly inspection, cleaning inspection and reassembly with bolts and bushings, that's
Right.
typical. I had it done last year as well. Same thing, 1,000-hour gear AD. We discovered that the gear AD was only 2,300 hours overdue. It had last been done 3,200 hours ago.
Yeah, but at least you got it done. So there, so you got that going for you, you know, which is nice.
Yeah. But there's so many people who wonder, how much is this going to cost and how long is it going to take? So your experience matches my experience with Zach Grant, which is it was under a week and it was under 3. And after measuring, what it needed was several of the bolts had some step wear and were undersized.
Right.
Anyway, so there you go, the public service announcement. Now, while we've got it, you jump in and say who you are, where you are, what you fly. But if you've got you happen to know, how is your 1,000-hour gear AD?
I see.
Will Carpenter. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I see Michael Moran, Chico, California. I've got a Comanche 260B that I'm resurrecting as a barn find, but 3,200 total time on it, hasn't flown since 97. So I'm looking forward to that punishment. I've got a question. Let's see, it's Rich Bergman asked about stall strips. Rich, did you mean VGs, or there is a difference between VGs, which make you land slower, or stall strips, which fix where your wing stalls?
Yes, it's the latter. And my bird stalls pretty rapidly in a power on stall. The wing just runs out of what it needs to be and it just drops over. And on the glass air, you were able to adjust that. It also has a 23,000 series laminar flow wing. And what a difference. Okay, you can pull it up like the Cherokee 140 and it'll just bobble around and the wing won't stall. Not like the radical stall that I get on my 260B. The first time that happened, I thought I had met my maker.
Well, generally speaking, the difference between an airplane that has a sharp stall like yours does and the other one that just kind of mushes along has to do with angle of attack. And that has to do with how much up elevator you've got. But if you were talking about the VGs, which would lower your stall speed, I think that organization up in Washington State, I think it is approved for the Comanche wing, and I'm thinking of looking into that.
Yeah, it is. There's an STC out for the stall strips, and or not the stall strips, for the VGs. And I was looking at it. I just don't like what they do to the wing, the look of it and everything, although I know they work very well. I just haven't made up my mind yet, but I just wondered if anybody had ever done anything on that, because stall strips are much cleaner. And you're right about all the things you said about the angle of attack, but it was, and my plane, the wing will stall on the left in all 4 states of stalls. So
Yeah,
you just got to remember that you don't cross control or you just bought it.
I've got VGs on my Pacer, and it really tames that airplane. It's not like the tri-Pacer I had when I was a kid. And the VGs serve a good purpose. If you're in a cold climate, you have to use a rope to take the frost off in the winter. You don't want VGs. You'd be taking them off with frost. So that's another consideration.
Well, I'm in Southern California, so that's not a big deal here.
Well, I am going to do this. I'm going to connect both of you guys with 2 people. One is Mark Sullivan, who's also in California and has a stall kit on his twin. And he reports that his airplane is very docile in the stall, like a Cherokee. So I'll get you guys connected. And the second thing is I'm going to make a note. We actually have an angle of attack ComancheZOOM coming up with Colonel Jim Walcott not too far from now, in about probably 3 weeks. And so that'll be, and Jim, you're in the room right now. Do you want to take on the question of stall strips versus VGs or stay with AOA?
I'll just stay with AOA. I'm not an expert on the stall strips in VG.
Well, I'll tell you what, we're going to find out who is, and we're going to do a ComancheZOOM on it because this is a great discussion. It is about 7:35, and because I'm about to stick Pete on the hot seat here, Pete, if it's all right with you, I'm going to just do a quick introduction of the 3 topics tonight, your little teaser, and then Will Carpenter on the virtual consult with Matt Kurke, and then John Bryerson on the Piper Museum. Is that all right with you guys?
Sure.
All right. So Pete Morse has been a flying, among many other things, because Pete is obviously critical to the ComancheZOOM team and runs the website. So many of us are getting our documentation from these days and our calendar events. Pete also brainchilded and organized what we call a type of mini clinic. And that will be happening. I asked Pete to talk about it because as the Comanche neighborhoods are starting to develop with fly-in starting to happen around the country, and hopefully, Luca Miranda, if you hear this later on the re-recording it around the world, this idea that we can start doing flight training is really something that we need to do as a whole type to keep our insurance rates down and to keep our birds as preserved and safe as we can. So Pete's going to give a teaser on that, and then we'll lead into Will Carpenter just giving a quick overview of a virtual consult, because making expertise like that of Matt Kurke, Hans Newbert, John Bryerson, who will be speaking afterwards. And before John starts, I'm going to do a separate introduction because he's pretty amazing. But John Bryerson's a DER like Hans Newbert with amazing expertise and experience. And that's the ComancheZOOM platform and team is able to help facilitate making this expertise available across whatever distance, and it's turning out to be effective. So Pete, you want to talk a little bit about what's coming up at the Parlin Field event?
Okay, I will do that. I'm also muting everybody temporarily so that we won't get background noise. So Will and John, when you get back, and you'll have to unmute yourself. What I'm going to be showing you with the share screen right now is the schedule for the fly-ins this year. This is the one we're talking about at Parlin Field. On the previous Thursday night, the 17th of June, we're doing a Zoom, ComancheZOOM on performance. George Miriam is going to be talking about one, how to get performance out of your aircraft, and then what all the things are possible. Basically going through the POH to reteach us on how to fly our Comanches to the best possible performance. And then on the 19th at the fly-in at Parlin Field in New Hampshire, we are going to have a get together. We're going to have basically a challenge to see who can land their Comanche with only 1 hop instead of 3 or 4 as usual. And we're also going to check on the distance that it takes to actually stop. Then after lunch, which is going to be provided by the Recycled Pilots Association right there at the field, 3 of them are wings instructors, and they're going to provide a wings program on can your Comanche really perform? That's the title of it. And what he do is go through the operational handbook on takeoffs particularly. And for the particular day, that temperature, that wind effect, that all those conditions, you calculate how much runway is going to take you to take off on the various configurations, short field, long, normal takeoff, grass field, whatever. And then go out to the field and try it. And there will be markers alongside the runway so you can see how you did. In fact, we will tell you on the radio when you're done how well you did or not. The whole idea is to make you the best possible Comanche pilot that you can be, at least that time. So that's the whole idea on that. Tonight, what we're doing, so for those of you that didn't get to see the beginning of this thing, we are doing this business right here. Oops, there we go. There. The topics of the Piper Museum with John Bryerson, getting ready for the Sentimental Journey, fly in there at the last week of this month. And then the virtual gear inspection. This is something we just tried recently, and it worked out much, much better than we had possibly hoped for. The Comanche that was being inspected was in North Carolina. The pilot and owner of the Comanche was at his Air Force base somewhere else, and Matt Kurke was in Florida. And using Zoom, one of the mechanics at the aircraft moved his camera around so that Matt could see what was going on, and Matt actually did a visual inspection of the installation of the gear and came up with a bunch of little suggestions here and there to make it better. And while he was at it, he made some suggestions about other stuff on the Comanche, which is being reassembled after it had been taken apart to move it to the repair station. And I'll let you get back to what's going on with all that. I would suggest also that you all go to the speaker view. So if you go up there in that little corner where the little box of dots is, click on that and say speaker view. That way you'll be able to see who's talking up close and personal. And I'm done.
So that's June 19th with a rain date of 20 at Parlin Field in Newport, New Hampshire. If anybody wants to come in and refine their expertise with 4 instructors available to train us, the 3 wings instructors and George Miriam. Is that right, Pete?
Yes, and also the ComancheZOOM that Thursday is going to be eligible for a wings credit. You'll have to sign up as usual. And there will be wings credit for the workshop at Parlin. So it's like a triple threat.
It is a triple threat. And furthermore, for those of you interested, sorry about the cat, everybody, in getting your biennial flight review completed, the wings program allows you to do it, and having both a flight credit and a seminar credit fulfills 30% of the total of 3 flight and seminar credits required. So possibly more depending on what type of flying you do. So if you have any ability, there's a sign up form at northeastcomanche.org. And you can go ahead and register for Parlin. Registration is not required. It's just makes it easier because we can let people know how many airplanes are coming so they can plan. And if you go to northeastcomanche.org and click on the fly-ins, and there's a registration form on the schedule. And for now, I'm going to introduce Will Carpenter. And the only other thing I wanted to mention is for those of you organizing neighborhood gets-togethers and fly-ins, we have a process and we can help you organize these types of things in your own area. So just get in touch with us and we'll help make it happen. With that, I'm going to introduce Will Carpenter, who was the owner and the pioneer for virtual remote consult with Matt Kurke of ComancheGear.com. For those of you, probably all of us know Matt Kurke, but just to be sure, Matt is recognized as probably the best expert in the world on the maintenance and assembly and disassembly and everything else, what can go wrong and right in the Comanche landing gear system, as well as many other things. Matt, for many years, flew a 400 around to help people keep their gear working. And ComancheGear.com is a well-known source for information. He's got a really complete website with tons of documentation, and he's also just a ridiculous expert. Will Carpenter, many of you know him from the 4-part series. He is the young Army captain whose connecting rod decided to depart his engine and blow a hole through his casing, and who successfully landed his Comanche virtually unscathed in a fortunately harvested bean field, and who talked us through everything that he had to learn about, surviving a forced, unplanned engine outage and recovery and insurance, working with your insurance company. So gives me great pleasure. Will Carpenter, thanks for being with us and giving us a quick intro to this. And then we'll go over to John Bryerton, who I'll also introduce.
Jay. Unfortunately, I'm learning much more about aircraft ownership in the first, I would say, 18 months of owning an aircraft than I had probably bargained for, or that my wife really bargained for too. But yeah, so just to give a little back, CJ did a good job. So, since the plane's been in pieces, I've taken this opportunity to go ahead and, replace the conduits. And, it's like everybody knows, this process, a can of worms. So, replacing the conduits, they're putting the gear together. They notice the transmission sounds a little funky. I take a video of it, again, using technology. I send the video to Matt Kurke. He diagnoses it, I think in like probably 20 seconds. So send it off to him, get it back. And then, so what I actually did to lay the foundation was I had told the shop I wanted to install these conduits, and that I would provide them with all the materials. So I sent them Matt Kurke's installation guide. So they installed it per his instructions, and then everything was in order at the time. So let me see if I can go ahead and share. I just put together a little presentation. Let's see if I can get this right. This is a new device for me. Let's see. All right. Can everybody see that, CJ? Is that all right?
Excellent. Looks great.
You got it? Okay. So, just some basic questions that I asked myself: why do a virtual inspection? Highly invasive maintenance was done. The wings were pulled off. The stabilator was pulled off. Landing gear was re-rigged. There's just a lot of stuff going on. There's a lot of Comanche specific systems. The plane ended up in a shop called Modern Aviation in Wilmington, which I would say about 8 months ago was not a Comanche shop, but now they're a shop that has reassembled the Comanche from pretty much from the ground up and pulled apart I'm trying to think, just about every major Comanche system I can think of, and put it back together. So they're cutting their teeth on my plane, which is good for everybody else, and I get to pay for it. So I guess, well, the insurance company pays for a lot of it too, so that's good. But you also get a second set of eyes with a virtual inspection. So the team, Pete did a great summary. So we had the Northeast Comanche tribe come in here, and they were, CJ, we kind of each fell into a role. It was really, we were all kind of unsure how this is going to play out, but everybody fell into a role probably pretty quick in the process. And this is kind of what I would recommend going forward. CJ was, I would call a virtual scribe, meaning Matt was making comments about different things throughout the inspection, and then he was making comments about service letters, and then during the Zoom call, CJ was there firing off emails to Matt saying, "Hey, send a service letter on this, send a service letter on that," which was awesome. That's somebody I think you need to have if you do this going forward. We had Pete Morse on the call and Robert Klein as our primary and secondary recorders that actually, they archived the video. So I have pictures of it, and I took some screen records of it that I'll show you guys just so you can see what it looks like if this is something you're interested in. We had Matt Kurke from his shop down in Florida. We had our Modern Aviation team up in North Carolina. We had Josh and Bill. They're both the mechanics that have worked primarily on the plane. Actually, they're the only ones that have worked on the plane. So they know a lot of the systems in and out at this point. So Josh was the cameraman. Bill was a scribe. So he was there taking notes for their shop to take oh, you need to put 2 washers under this bolt, that's the wrong bolt, this brake line is routed the wrong way. Bill is writing all those things down, and he actually sent me a summarized list the next day, which was super helpful. And then there was me. I was just at my office here down in Fort Stewart, and just kind of watching the whole thing. And so that's how it all played out. And then this is kind of the sequence. I mean, we were all kind of figuring it out as we went along. Generally, this is the process we used, the order of things the order of events, but we obviously bounced it around a little bit because sometimes Matt would think about something like, oh, go back to this or go back to that. We didn't check this. And it was really easy to do that. I mean, it didn't take a long time at all. I mean, if you look at all these items, I think the total time was just over 2 hours for the video. This is kind of this is my after action review. And I talked to CJ, some of the big takeaways. I mean, the biggest benefit of this is that it's incredibly easy to schedule a virtual consult because you're not requiring anybody to travel. Everybody can do it from the comfort of their office or their home. It's very easy to do. It is significantly less expensive. I mean, when I did a pre-buy in my Comanche in the fall of 2019, it cost me probably close to $3,000 because I flew the expert out, paid for travel, accommodations, paid for his time, but in this context, you're paying for the shop that's doing the inspection. So I got 2 A&Ps. So, we'll just use $100 an hour. So the 2 guys at Modern Aviation assume, that cost me $400 for their time. And then, whatever Matt's rate is, if that's $100 an hour, that's $200 for his time. So $600 plus, the time and effort that you have to expend and then that the Comanche team expends, but it is a fraction of what it would cost. And you get the ability to evaluate almost every part of the airframe, and you have a digital record of it. So you can look back at it. You have a historical archive. If things start to look different in the future, how did this look back then? The drawback, obviously, is that it probably takes longer to go through this kind of inspection because you're having the conductor who's Matt, who's saying, go here, touch this, manipulate that. No, not that bolt, that other one. No, where your finger is, where your thumb is, all these different kinds of things that take a little bit more time, but it's really not that noticeable. And then the biggest complaint that a lot of experts would say, I imagine they would say, is that you lose the ability to touch and feel. So you can't be as thorough, you can't give as honest an opinion because you can't physically manipulate the side brace strut or anything like that. You can't put your hands on everything. So that's probably one of the big drawbacks. These are kind of my list of the main recommendations. I mean, I think one thing you have to do is engage with the shop early on to see if this is something that they'd be interested in doing. I could imagine there's a lot of shops out there that would get heartburn over another A&P criticizing their work or saying that this was done incorrectly. I think that Modern Aviation did a good job. I mean, Matt was really splitting hairs, and when he was saying yeah, that's a little bit wrong. I would say there was maybe one thing that, Modern Aviation didn't know based on lack of experience, which was probably the tightness of the landing gear, how tight everything has to be rigged. That they weren't as familiar with that. So that's something that Matt was able to catch and be no, you need to make that tighter. And I talked to him afterwards, and no, we're not embarrassed. We're new to these systems and we're learning about it. And there's things that, that Matt was able to impart upon us that we didn't know. And that the service manuals, are obviously not written the best. So I think it's important to engage with shop early on and ask them hey, is this something you would be willing to do before you try to coordinate it? And I think there's also an incentive here for the shop when they know a second set of eyes is coming in, that they kind of want to cross their T's and dot their I's. Maybe, I don't know. It's probably in the back of their head. Another thing you need to have with you is you need to get a solid Wi-Fi connection in the shop. I mean, that's pretty important. We had a pretty good Wi-Fi connection. I mean, it lagged a little bit, but it definitely didn't compromise the inspection in any way that I noticed. But that's something I would definitely recommend having. Having the plane set up on jacks, hooked up to external power so you can do a gear swing. Make sure the systems are installed properly. I mean, it sounds kind of simple, but one of the biggest benefits that I think we had was the shop had installed the conduits. I mean, that was kind of the main thing they were looking at per Matt's instruction manual. So they were able to, the shop and Matt were able to talk the talk. I mean, I'm not an A&P, so it's above my head, but they knew what each other was talking about, which was helpful because they were relying on the same resources when they did the work. We noticed that it's really important to have a light source, so like a flashlight or something that you can shine in different places. Having a pen in hand is really useful. So when you're on the screen and you can manipulate it, you can point to different things. For Matt or whoever the other expert is on the other end of the call, you can say, oh yeah, this bolt or that bolt, or move that 2 inches to the right or left. That's very helpful. I'd recommend having a backup cell phone battery on hand, just because Zoom tends to suck your battery down. Have a scribe at the ready on the Zoom call, like we talked about, camera person at the ready. And I thought it was a huge, I think at first I said, I don't know if I need to be on the call, but CJ kind of pushed me to, and I think that was a huge, huge benefit. So let me go to some of these pictures that you'll see. So these are just screenshots from the call. So you can see here that, this is the clarity of the images that we're able to pull. There's obviously Josh pointing with his finger. And that's the right side. Here's my shameless pitch right now is if anybody knows where a left main upper strut housing, if they have one sitting on their shelf somewhere for a rainy day, let me know and send me a message, and I'd like to take it off your hands, because the other side of this has a crack on it. Here's this is a video that I took. So it's kind of give you a depiction of what it looks like, in the archive. So this is them obviously looking at the nose gear. There's Matt. You guys don't have the audio, but I'm focusing on the visual. You can in the video you can hear everything Matt's saying, but they're pointing to different things. They're pointing to the steering control mechanism right there, that rod, that yellow thing. So Matt pointed out that should probably be pulled out, removed, cleaned. So that's something the shop's going to do. It's probably never been done before. And then here's another. This is an interesting one. So this is a video where Josh, the camera guy, took the camera and shined a light up into the wheel well so you can see how tight it fits. So he's obviously up there, pushing it. You can see how snug everything fits up into the wheel well, which is kind of a neat thing that you obviously can't put your head up there. You can maybe use a mirror, but that's something that you could use. And now we have a video record of it. And then you can obviously get the functionality of the motor transmission assembly. One of the things we did notice is that the Zoom call, for some reason, the audio tends to get all finicky on when the motor starts to operate. So the recommendation there is if you're concerned about any sounds or how your gear's operating, to just take a video of it on your smartphone and just send it to Matt in an email or whatever expert you want to use, and they can review it and give you good feedback on, oh no, that's normal, that sounds good. Because we're just kind of testing a concept, but the Zoom call probably isn't the best place to assess any kind of like sounds or abnormal indications from the transmission assembly. So let me see if I can get back to the Zoom call here. And that's kind of my breakdown of the virtual consultation. I thought it was awesome. We, good or bad, we identified that there's a crack in the webbing in my left main gear upper strut housing. And one of the things Matt also called me out on was that the wiring harnesses were bad, so I got those in. I got those replaced. And yeah, it was very productive. I got a lot of good feedback. There were a lot of I guess Comanche gotchas that the shop was able to identify just from having somebody, in their shop, 600 miles away doing the consultation. But yeah, I thought it was super valuable. And if anyone's interested, I know Matt has said he's happy to do it for anyone. I'm sure the Northeast team, I'm not going to sign them up for anything, but I'm sure they'd be happy to help you out too. But I thought it was an extremely valuable process. And if you're doing your own service and you're not really sure, or if you have a shop that's not really a Comanche shop doing it, I would highly recommend having them get the second set of eyes in there, and then they can learn, from the expert and become a Comanche shop that other people can rely on. But that's all I have, CJ. I thought it was a great experience.
Well, thank you so much. That is a great summary. Hopefully we've given you all a teaser, and just to let you know, this is a little bit of a teaser. I asked Will to talk about this because of the need to get expertise out and train each other and train our shops. We're not as common as we were in the 70s and 60s. And so this is an opportunity. Matt, I believe, liked the shop. We're thrilled to have a Comanche expert shop in that area, which previously was kind of a big hole in the middle of that part of the US. So we're also happy to help others happen. I wanted to let you know that oh, go ahead.
I was just saying, oh, sorry, go ahead. I don't interrupt.
No, but we're talking about obviously it's good to have a Comanche shop up your way, but I really do think the networking of Comanche knowledgeable shops is a really important thing to do. I have been having an absolute nightmare trying to find a 400 mechanic in Utah, you know, which the network would have been really helpful to be able to find someone to help my client out and get his plane sorted.
Well, I'm going to just give you guys a teaser. We have a list already of people willing to do these virtual consults. Matt Kurke's knowledge was absolutely, just to watch somebody with that kind of knowledge guide two guys through looking at a Comanche like Will's was almost a religious experience. And John Bryerson, who I'm about to introduce, is one of the two DERs who I think will be able to do virtual consults as well. We're gathering a list of people who have experience and expertise in doing PMAs, STCs, field approvals. And so it's not just the expertise itself, but also how to negotiate the process of getting parts and procedures handled. So that's a much larger topic for another time, but we're actively working on it and it's really coming together and we're so excited. So stay tuned. Will, thank you so much for a great job and a great prezo as always. And then
CJ,
go ahead.
CJ. Yeah, Mike Moran. Will, with respect to your cracked landing gear housing, I watch a number of sites pretty faithfully, and I think I saw a pair recently advertised, and I think it was either on Craigslist, and if it was Craigslist, I don't remember what city, but also more than likely it was probably eBay aircraft parts. And if you go on to eBay aircraft parts, and just put PA-24 Comanche, that's what I look at. And it was a recent posting within the last couple of days.
Okay, thank you. I'll check it out. I'm noticing, I'm becoming intimately familiar with the nuances of the different castings. And I'm learning that a lot of the salvage yards don't really understand that as much. And they say, oh, we have this for the Comanche 260 or the Comanche 400. And then I look at it and I'm like, that's for a 180 or that's for a 250. And no, thanks. But no,
here's the good news.
I'll definitely check that out. I've been looking, I found one place in Arizona that has labeled the left main as the right main. And so I'm going to see if that one is worthwhile, but I did not think about Craigslist. So thank you for that. I'll check that one out too.
Yeah, and Will, just a few months ago, I was in the Phoenix area and I went by, I think the name of it is Arizona Aircraft Salvage.
Yep.
And they had like 3 Comanches in the boneyard and one recent one that they had in there. So they're, you know, that's probably not a hot item, and except if you need one, then you can't find it, of course. So I'm out.
Good. Here you go. Comanches helping Comanches. I will just add that Zach Grant confirmed that, believe it or not, they will all fit everything. The only difference is the bushings. But I'm not going to dive into that conversation right here because we have John Bryerson teed up. Any last quick things to take 60 seconds?
Will,
Yeah,
is yours?
Sorry, go ahead, sir. Go ahead.
Will, is yours completely cracked through both sides, or is it from the whole outboard or whole inboard?
It's not cracked through, so I know it's savable. But hey, I just had a hard landing, and this is something that the insurance company can help me out with. So I'm trying to ride their coattails as far as they'll take me. And then my vision for the future is to take the one that has the crack just in the initial part of the webbing and get it repaired somewhere else. My shop's also kind of antsy about leaving something that's broken like that on the plane. But I'll just take it somewhere else down the road and get it repaired and, save it for, me, or if somebody else needs it, then I can give it to them.
Okay.
Hey, Will, this is Troy Watson here in Texas. I just want to give you a quick feedback on your briefing on your hard landing. Excellent job. Another Comanchero here in Texas had a belly landing just the other day, and they hit me up because I also had my issue in the fall and had some insurance experience, but I was able to refer him to your video on the Northeast Comanche Tribe deal, and that was super helpful. I mean, that's a great resource. So kudos on you and all the Northeast Comanche Tribe from Texas. Appreciate you.
Thank you for helping your neighbors. It's what makes us work.
CJ, this is Jimmy. I will say Northeast Comanche's got more going on than the rest of it's got going on. So
You're all part of it, Jimmy.
Well,
we are all in this together.
And by the way, my name is Jimmy Upfors. I fly 260 Comanche 65 in Allen. Mine's at Renjay Aviation in Thompson, trying to get avionics done in it. So, but I'm hoping to have it back this month. So, but I'm glad you found out, because I was concerned about when we talked about that thing. But like I say, when I talked to Cliff, I think the older ones are the better ones instead of newer ones. That's what I've come up with all my research, and I think I've been fairly strenuous at researching it. CJ, what do you think?
I have seen some of Jimmy's research, and he is meticulous. So we are really looking forward to it. So I am going to just start an intro. So John Bryerson is with us, and John is a treasure. So John, don't get embarrassed, but I'm just gonna talk a little about you for 1 second. And so I don't know if any of you have been to the Piper Museum at Lock Haven, but as you know, our Comanches were built at Lock Haven along with the Aztecs, the Arapahoes. Our birds are special in a number of ways. They were zinc chromated before assembly, and so were the Apaches and one of the few Arapahoes. And it's part of what makes us so corrosion resistant and last so long. We were built only by the most senior assembly guys, and that's part of why the quality is in general really good. Although John's mentioned a few times when he was like, "Yeah, we were just trying to get it done." It was our Comanches were an engineering project, not a marketing influence project, which is part of, I think, why we're such marvelous birds. Not that we're modest or anything. And so the Piper Museum at Lock Haven is different from the Vero Beach Museum. And John was an engineer for Piper, started out part-time in, what was it, 64, John, and then went full-time in 65?
I actually started in 62.
Oh my
worked
goodness.
First until 64 when they hired me full-time.
Brilliant. And so you worked on our B model Comanches, yes?
Yes, I worked on when they decided to go sixth place on the airplane. And then I worked on the 300 version of the Comanche, which never went anywhere. I worked on the Arapaho, engineering design of the Arapaho. I don't have much experience with the twin Comanche, except for the fact when I was power plant and we decided it would be better if the one engine went backwards. And my task was to sit it like coming down Williamsport and tell me when to run it backwards. And you should have seen the look on their faces. But anyway, we got a little kit that makes it go the other way. You buy a propeller and a camshaft and a few other little gizmos. I think the magnetos have to be changed, but to make a CR or a 39, Mike Cumming was very happy to do that for us. And there's a service button that allows you to switch it to a 39. Now that might help the fella that's having some serious stall problems on the airplane. I don't know if it'd go the other way, it would help, but I don't know. But I do know that I flew a lot of Tomahawks, and I flew the prototype Tomahawks that had no stall strips. And you want a really bad ride, that was the airplane to give you a bad ride. When it stalled, you went upside down. And then they came up with the two airplanes that they had worked on in Florida to put stall strips on the Tomahawk. And it made a tremendous difference in stall. It was straight ahead stall. I mean, it's just like a Cherokee. It was no problem. But the first ones were nasty, I can tell you that. But,
John, regarding the Tomahawk, it's a little bit off topic, but I was wondering if I can ask if the story is true about Piper designing the Tomahawk by asking flight instructors what they were looking for.
That's pretty much true. Yeah, that's what I understand. Johnny Piper, they sent Johnny Piper to Florida, to Vero Beach. And John did, I don't know, probably about a year's research. Now, I don't know how the T-tail got on there. I can't imagine that anybody would want that.
That was because I heard that was because the a lot of where they were training them, BA was a huge customer of them, and they were all flying things like Tridents and 727s, which all had big T-tails.
Yeah, there you go. But it's kind of the original Tomahawk had a conventional tail, and then Piper got into the T-tail phobia, and that's how it came out with the T-tail. But the thing has a lot of nasty habits, but after you put about 10, 15 hours on a Tomahawk, it's not too bad an airplane.
See, that's interesting because my first airplane, the one I bought before a Comanche was I called it Bomsey. It was BOMZ, and it was a 1978 Piper Tomahawk. They had the original blue and red livery that was seen in Iron Eagle, I think it was. It was one of the camera planes in one of those Top Gun spoof films.
Well, I'll tell you, when I first did my check ride in the Tomahawk, the flight instructor, we got up to about 4,000 feet, and he says, "Now I want to see a straight ahead power on stall." And it started to shake. He said, "Turn around and look at the tail." You don't want to do that. You think it was going to come off.
Yeah, I remember that. I was very happy to sell it and get a Comanche.
Yeah, there you go. You made a real good deal. Well,
So
anyway, enough Tomahawks.
So John, also just want to introduce you in part because you're one of the people that will be available for remote consult. So John Bryerson is also a DER. And John, you are flammability, and talk to us a little bit about your capabilities, because they're pretty amazing.
I'm strictly part 3, 4Bs, just about anything pre. I'm all part 23, but I don't have any part 25 except a few narrow bands. I got authority in some helicopters, but I used to work for Schweitzer building helicopters, so I just kind of abandoned that work. So anyway, I'm strictly part 23, power plant installations. I don't have any authority in 33. So 33 is engines. I cannot modify anything that comes out of like Cumming motors. And I have mechanical systems. I used to be flight test pilot, flight analyst, a couple other things, but I've left them drop. So that's my engineering background.
And then flammability, of course. So flammability.
Well, yeah, I've got a little test lab, but part 23 flammability has changed so much that I really don't. They've come after me. I have to have a refrigerator with a 50% humidity in it. And I have to, well, yeah, you do. You got to hang the samples vertical for 2 weeks or something with a 50% humidity. And when originally I started that, all you did was take a piece of fabric about 3 inches wide and 12 inches long and set one end on fire and measure it. But I've only done a few flammabilities in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
So I even though it's on my ticket, I mean, you can look me up in Pennsylvania DERs, and I'm current. I've been through brainwashing school every year. So anyway, I had to come up your way there, CJ, here a couple of years ago to Nashua for my brainwashing school. But it's pretty much evolved into everything's online with the FAA. And most of my advisors in New York, they're working at home. So I don't even know who's in the office in New York. But anyway, I got my ticket revised, so good for another year. And I have to take a couple courses online and I'll be ready to go again.
Well, that is brilliant. And part of the reason I wanted to mention that is that, and that means the engine accessories, you can help us if we want to do things to engine accessories.
Yes, I would have propellers. I can't, now that's propeller, I can't modify propellers, but I can match propellers. I've done, helped on STCs to put constant speed propellers on Cherokees and some things like that. So I have that authority. I can do cooling, engine cooling. I could do all of the fuel system, including the tanks, sending units, pumps, fuel lines, just about everything that connects to the firewall except the engine.
Well, that is actually huge because on our fuel system, we actually have been looking, I just found this out tonight, everybody, but you may have seen some discussion, everybody who's been monitoring about certain elements, particularly of the twin fuel systems where we have parts becoming a little bit unobtainium. And
yeah, that's a nightmare. Oh, geez. Take a look at the selector valve in the twin Comanche sometime. It looks like a bowl of spaghetti.
So I think we may be talking. I did not realize you had that capability, and I'll be putting you in touch with a couple of people that need to talk to you. Good. Well, everybody, this Zoom just paid for itself in terms of value. So, so John, as I mentioned, is in addition to being an engineer on our Comanches and having a lot of cool capabilities and having spent, it turns out, 2,000 hours more or less sitting in the back of airplanes monitoring cooling, which, John, you are going to be coming back and talking to us about that because that's a whole topic in itself.
Yes, it is. Yep. Mm-hmm.
But is head of the Piper Museum, has kept it open, kept it running, kept it really fun to visit, kept a great crew there, making it an awesome place to be. And then Sentimental Journey is going to be happening. And John, you had mentioned that the serial number 1 Comanche is going to be there at Pride of Place. So please talk to us about what your challenges are, who you are, what your challenges are, how we can help, and about coming to visit you and getting with you in late June this month, possibly.
Yes, well, the Piper Museum rented a large section of the 3rd floor to a gas company, and they were with us from the beginning. They're the reason we have the museum building is because we had a lease from the gas company that the bank actually loaned us the money to buy the building based upon that lease. Well, the lease ran out last fall because everybody in the gas company was working at home and they had no need for an office. So they left us, which left us very, very short on income for the museum. Now, the primary effort right now is make some kind of an attempt to rent that facility on the 3rd floor. I told CJ the other night that Mr. Jamino's office that used to sit and look down in almost the middle of runway 9, got a beautiful walnut desk set and everything. The people left it all behind. And it's a beautiful office, 3rd floor. It's completely furnished. The gas company left all their furniture behind. The only thing they took out was their computers and personal items, but they gave everything to the museum. The other thing we have is we have what we call a party room or Aztec room on the 3rd floor. The Sunday of the Sentimental Journey, Short Wing Club is going to have their convention here, and they're going to be here from Sunday through Saturday of the fly-in. So they've got the whole 3rd floor. And we rent that for parties, wedding receptions, weddings, what have you. We'd like to fill that in as much as we can. We're doing a lot of local advertising for that room. Plus, we've had weddings and receptions and things like that on the 1st floor where we pull the airplanes out. And we have our annual QB meeting down in there where we pull airplanes out and have 70, 75 Bergman and their guests in there during the fly-in. But anyway, the museums, we're making it. And Ron Dremel owns a Comanche 260, and I'm handing the gavel over to Ron in June. So I'm not retiring. I'm going to be there. I want to be the docent or the concierge. Somebody comes to the museum, they just have to ask the girl if John's here. And I'd be more than happy to meet with you, show you around the museum and tell you a lot of nasty stories about Piper aircraft. So I don't know what else to tell you. I used to walk down the middle of the Comanche line almost every day because part of my job at Piper was troubleshooting. And if there were production airplanes that had problems, I had to walk down the middle of the Comanche line. The Comanche was pretty reliable. And you did mention the Comanche line was a lot of the older fellows that worked at Piper aircraft. They always liked Comanche line. That was singles and twins. And I knew every guy that was on that line. Now I only ever flew pilot in command on a Comanche once, and that's it. So, but I've been Navajos, Cheyennes, Tomahawks, Aztecs, got my all engine rating in an Aztec. So I've been around for a while. I'm not what we call a high time pilot. I hate to say this, but I actually joined a club that had a tri-pacer in it for a while. And then we bought a Cessna Skyhawk, had 2 doors. That's why I really liked it, because I'm a big guy and trying to get in a tri-pacer with into the pilot seat is a real bear. Plus it's hard to get a passenger in there with you. So I got into the Cessna 172 and I really loved that airplane. But I don't know what else to tell you. The museum could use anybody's help. If you come to the fly-in, come to the museum and look me up, because Ron will be here, Ron Dremel, and we're going to have Norm Johnston's #1 Comanche. And I know it is #1 because I helped Norm a little bit with the airplane. And we were patching holes in the firewall and he wondered what all the holes were. And I said, well, that was all instrumentation, which tells me it's a prototype Comanche. And then we're going to have, of course, our 400s in there, and Ron will probably have his 260 around. So we'll have lots of Comanches on the field. If you got any questions, ask me now.
Well, maybe we can bring you more.
What?
Can't
hear you.
Can you talk a little bit about? Oh.
About what?
John, can you talk to us a little bit about serial #1 and the project to find and save her?
You mean when Norm got his airplane? Well, you'd have to talk to Norm about that, because he found it, I don't know, I guess it was fairly close to a junk pile up there in Connecticut someplace. I don't know where he got it, but they took, John Spencer flew Norm's good airplane up and dumped Norm off beside what he bought. And they walked around a little bit and the engine fired up and he turned around and headed for home. But the weather wasn't real swell, and Norm said he got about halfway here and he lost sight of John. And he looked up at the whiskey compass. And there wasn't any whiskey in the whiskey compass. He said the ball was just rolling around in there. But Norm made it back to Lock Haven, put it in a hangar, and he'd been working on it for a couple of years. He said the electrical system was a real rat's nest, and he had to completely tear all the wiring out behind the instrument panel. I don't think he did a whole lot replacing instruments. I don't think he put the ADS in it, but he has that in his other airplane. And I think it's just kind of a showpiece or an antique for Norm. If you wanted, I would hope we could get Norm on, but I don't know how techy he is. So
we'll track him down, twist his arm.
I'll try to do my best. If
well, we have a few questions in the ComancheZOOM window.
John, if I can interject.
There's Norm right there, or Norm. There's Ron, our new president.
Norm's hangar is right down from mine, and I watched him tear that apart and put it back together. His wife, Peg, is also a pilot, and that was supposed to be her airplane, but she tells me that the seat rails are too short. The seat won't go far enough ahead. She can't reach the pedals. So she has to work that out before it can be her airplane. But it was quite a project to see done, and it basically stripped it down to nothing, tore everything out of it. As John said, the wiring was, a lot of it, I think, was there from the Piper days. Piper actually kept that plane from what I understand, in-house for about 2 or 3 or 4 years, used it as their test bed airplane, had a couple of engines hanging on it. They had a 250 on it for a while and used it for various tests. And hence a lot of the wiring was still left behind when Norm got it. And it was, I think about 1958, it was sold, certified and sold. And I don't know where it bounced around until a few years ago when Norm and Peg bought it. The only thing he didn't do, and we hoped he would have done, was give it the original pink paint scheme. But Norm says, I'm not flying a pink airplane.
Wait a minute, it was pink?
It was pink. When you come to the museum during Sentimental Journey, we have a colored picture of it in the original paint scheme. It's kind of an off pink. I think probably Piper had some paint left over, threw some colors together, and that's what they come up with, and that's what they got.
That is brilliant. I had no idea it was pink.
It's not all pink, it's pink and black.
Pink. Yeah, pink and black.
Yeah, that's even better, a pink and black Comanche.
Oh, no, too bad.
So now I had heard the first one actually had a 2000 number. Is that true?
You mean maybe the first one that went in?
Yep. In fact, David Crotchwell just posted it was a 2024 Pop is serial number 24-1.
Yeah. Don't know whether Norm kept the end number or not.
No, yeah, 2024 Pop is the end number on the airplane.
Yep.
Okay, there you go.
So he kept it. Anybody know where November 7000 Yankee falls into the twin lineage? I'm just reading off questions from the chat window.
Well, I'll just tell you that airplane was in front of the museum 2 weeks ago. And I never got to talk to the people. The girl, it was on the weekend, and the girl upstairs is not a Piper person. She's just a cashier and she does very good for what she does, but she's not a pilot or anything. She doesn't know anything about Piper. But I was just coming into the parking lot. I think it was a Saturday afternoon late. And I looked out in the field and there was that airplane. And it was original paint job and everything. And I don't know who was there or anything about it, but I went back up there and asked her who signed in. She said she didn't think they signed in. So I'd love to see that airplane back again.
Well, let's see. I'll make a note and we'll see if we can track down the owners, since obviously they were close enough to be there.
It must be fairly close to us. I don't know. I mean, it was just a weekend afternoon. It was a nice day and the airplane was parked out there. So,
tell you what, while we're doing this, can somebody that's on this ComancheZOOM jump into the FAA registry and look up November 7000 Yankee and see if it's based, or at least if it's registered to a company in the area or a person.
yeah, well, we can go to, I can hunt it down. I can go to the database and find it. That's not a problem. I just never did. I just was surprised to see it sitting there. And there's a lot of times when people come to the museum, they know me because of Piper, and they'll ask somebody upstairs where I am. Now, Saturday afternoons, I'm usually in a building someplace, but not near the phone or anything. But somehow I can't stay away from the place.
Well, we have a couple of questions asking to talk a little bit more about Sentimental Journey and the fly-in. And just so you know, we are creating a registration form so we can gather Comanches for that pancake breakfast, definitely at the end, and to come in and see the serial number 1. But can you talk to us a little more about the history of Sentimental Journey and what it takes to come there and how we can participate, and anything else you want to talk to us about?
I was an original board member of Sentimental Journey, but that didn't happen. I think the first one might have been 85 or 86 was the number 1 there. And a fellow by the name of Cal Order was a local guy, sales guy at Piper. He's on our board of directors. And Cal got the brainstorm that we ought to have some place to keep our archives and I guess the sessions and things. And they piled into the back room of Hangar 1. Used to be a ground school room back there, and they were piling it in there. And then he went to the local historical society, which is, it's Clinton County Historical Society. And they made the Piper Museum a committee, I guess you'd call it, just a committee of that. And Cal headed up that committee. And they bought Cal bought a semi-tractor trailer, painted it yellow and it said Piper Museum on it. And he traveled around to air shows with a couple other people. And the local boys high school shop put cabinets in there. And so we took a lot of the artifacts and put them in there. And Cal took that thing around for 4 or 5 years and paid for everything himself. And then we had this opportunity to buy the building. The engineering building was actually owned by a car rebuilding outfit. It was called Champion Ports, I believe it was. But anyway, they abandoned the building. They made a mess out of the building. They had cook tanks in there and everything. And the price kept coming down. And Cal and Bill Piper and a couple other people went to an attorney uptown and say, what would it take to buy the building? And so the gas company, which was Pennsylvania Power and Light, said, we'll give you a 10-year lease. And they based a 10-year lease based upon what it would cost to remodel that room, plus fix up the museum. So they paid a handsome rent. We bought the building. And Cal and Bill Jr. Piper co-signed the loan with the bank. And it took us 10 years and we paid it off. So we owned the building. And the remodel was another loan of about $600,000. We paid that off. And the building's ours and the contents are ours. And as far as I know, it's a great museum. I think if Ron wants to pipe up, he's got lots and lots of ideas for fundraisers. You still there, Ron?
Yes, I am, John.
Well, why don't you tell them about the letters you're going to send out for memberships?
Well, yeah, we're going to run a membership drive. Those letters should be going out next week. We're asking everyone to become members. You do that, you get a free shirt or a mug or a hat, your choice. And of course, with a membership, you get free admission to the museum anytime you come in. A single membership will be $75. So you get a $20 shirt and a few trips to the museum, and you paid it. We've always been a little laxed in raising money in the past because we didn't have to. We had UGI to pay most of our expenses, but now we have to do things a little differently, and we've made a few changes, and we're going to raise a little more money. We're hoping to have a few fundraisers. We may do a fly-in in September. Fly in, come to the museum. We'll give you a free hot dog and a Coke, and you get to tour the museum. We're hoping to put that together sometime in September. We're going to do some various other things. And we're hoping to get a couple other younger people on our board that can be a little more active and have the energy to do some of the legwork that needs to be done. But we're doing things like having Norm and Peg show the #1 Comanche. A lot of people would like to see that, and that's just little things that swap things around the museum and make it a little fun. I'm talking to a gal right now about doing a children's section. Hopefully we can do that, some interactive things, so when the family comes in, the little kids can have a little more fun. I've had my grandchildren, my granddaughters were with me at the museum a couple of weeks ago, and some of the stuff's a little boring if you're not a pilot. So we want to get some interactive things for kids and try to make it more fun and get some more attendance at the museum. And if we get our attendance up a little bit more and get some membership sales, we can meet our budget. So that's what we're hoping to do.
Okay, thanks,
Awesome.
Ron.
Ron, welcome. It's a pleasure to meet you.
Well, he's, like I said, I'm handing the gavel over to him here at the June meeting, so he doesn't know what he's in for right now. His day is going to be full. Because between Ron and I, we got a lot of really good ideas.
You guys look like you're going to be an amazing team. One of the very largest gatherings of Comanches outside of ComancheTown was the fly-in 2017 to the Piper Museum at Lock Haven. I remember we completely filled your parking lot with Comanches and went all around the building. And wondering if we can't try to do that again.
Love to see you
Well,
there.
there's no reason, we can do that. There's no reason we can't do that. We'll just rope off the parking lot and have a sweeper down here and get all the big rocks off of it. But other than that, well, we did pave half the parking lot. So the half the parking lot's really nice. Back half's got weeds growing out of it, but it's nice and smooth.
Excellent. Well, there's a lot of pilots that I've seen say, we really want to do that pilgrimage with our Comanches and take our Comanches home to see mom. And
There you go.
so, yep. So what is the date of the pancake breakfast so that we can all try to come and, and fill part of your parking lot with Comanches in late June?
The pancake breakfast does not take place during the fly-in, CJ.
No.
Great. Glad you clarified.
Yeah, that's the fundraiser that the Sentimental Journey has actually twice a year. However, with the COVID thing going on, they were not able to have it this past year. But if you do fly in, there are plenty of food vendors there. There'll be plenty of places to find things to eat.
Well, we
And
were
if you
looking
fly
at
in,
trying to get, oh, go ahead.
No, I say fly in, look me up. I'm going to be camping on the field with my grandkids most of the week, and as well as spending some time at the museum. So, fly in, maybe we can get you all parked in that area together. And it's going to be pretty full this year. The Short Wing Piper Club is coming in, and they expect to have about 60 airplanes. So if the weather is good and that's 60 planes on top of everyone else that flies in, it's going to be a fun time.
Would it be inconvenient if another 20 of us showed up and added to the fun, or would you kind of run out of space and maybe we should try to?
Oh, no, there's plenty of space. There's plenty of
We'll
space.
take care of it. We'll take care of it. Ron's arranged to have a shuttle car, and we have a golf cart. You park at the museum, we'll take you anywhere you want to go.
Well, in that case, Pete Morse has already committed to put a registration form and an entry into the schedule on northeastcomanche.org, everybody. So if you think you might want to make a soon pilgrimage, because you're just going stir crazy and your airplane's flyable, we will put that date up. The reason I'm asking you guys this, we may as well just do this right on the fly, is we usually pick a Saturday with Sunday as a rain date. Pete Morse, do you think, and part of we just didn't want to pick a date where we were going to be impossible if a bunch of us showed up. But Pete, what day? You said it's the 22nd through the 26th.
Tuesday through Saturday.
Yep.
So,
and that final Saturday's an okay day?
Well, it tends to be a good day because a lot of the people that have flown in and been there all week, they leave. So the Sentimental Journey is fully open, but the airplanes, well, the only people that usually stick around for Saturday night is for the banquet in case they want themselves a trophy. But Sunday, the place is vacant. The problem is the vendors are gone from the Sentimental Journey. So Saturday would be good for less traffic, but Sunday is turning into a ghost town.
Yeah, Sunday is over. The Sentimental Journey actually ends Saturday night.
probably a good idea then would be to make Saturday a one-shot deal.
Yep, I agree. And that means people can come in earlier in the week and camp with the Cubs, and those of us who were camping, I think most of us will be saving our camping days for the ComancheTown at Oshkosh. But Pete, you want to put it up for the 26th? One-shot deal?
Sounds fine to me, yep.
All right, everybody, you heard it here first. There's going to be a 626 Comanche fly-in to a neighborhood gathering. And I'm sure Bill Kniff and Pete Morse will be, and Pat Lee probably will be putting their heads together to make this amazing.
That's the weekend after Parlin, so it's a busy month.
It is indeed.
And if you'd like to contact me, I'd be happy to help, and I can meet you folks there as you come in and see if we can't get everybody parked in the same spot.
John, why don't you put your contact info in the chat medium window?
Sure.
Pete, you read my mind. Now, there's a couple other questions that have come in from the chat window that have a little to do with our history. So I'll just go ahead to those. So we have about 6 entries for November 7,000 Yankee, and some interesting information. So it's registered to a company called Slowpoke Air LLC in Florida. And a wizard, Marty, said that the records indicate that Myra Cloud or clue, is the owner of Slowpoke Air LLC in Palm Harbor. So we don't know where it's based, but that's where it's registered to.
Well, it's not here.
Nope, but the mailing address is in the chat window if you all want to drop a note to them and say, hey, we saw your bird out. Now, one other thing that showed up in the chat window is, and then I'll get back to the questions. And I just want to say great detective work, everyone. Is Dave, do you want to, you said you texted, I don't think that's the original November 7000 Yankee. The serial number on that plane is 30-1188. And there's another PA-30 7000 Yankee hanging up in the FAA Technical Center in Alpha Charlie Yankee. That's probably serial number 30-1.
Yeah, that's the one in Atlantic City, the FAA Technical Center, Atlantic City. So I would imagine that's probably the original 7000 Yankee.
Got it.
The serial number doesn't seem to match up with the one that's currently flying.
Well, I love the fact that you've put a picture as your background of your airplane parked in front of the Paper Museum at Lock Haven. That is well done.
Thanks. Yeah, me and the wife and the kid, we went there one day and visited the museum, and it was a great experience. We loved it. And the FBO across the way was also very accommodating, really, really nice. So I highly recommend people make the journey and make the visit.
It is amazing. It's such a special feeling when a Comanche is back where it was built. I don't even know why. It's just special. It feels amazing. I agree. I recommend it. Other questions include, let's see. Okay, Ron, we've got your info in the chat window. A question for John from Rick. What was changed from the 260 to the 300? I've heard of a couple 260 to 300 conversions. And by the way, Rick, I'll just mention that there's a gentleman that occasionally joins us from South America that has one of them. Is that something to consider when the motor in my 260 needs to be changed?
Well, that becomes a little bit more difficult than just an ordinary DER. I mean, I can put the engine in it, but now you've got to do spin tests and all kind of performance information and things like that. And all that data would be lost in the records of Piper aircraft. So what happens to the FAA is you have a change of mass center of gravity of the airplane. So you're into doing spin recovery tests. And I would never want to do it. It's really bad. So because you have to do asymmetric loadings, one fuel tank full, one fuel tank empty, gross weights, light weight. You could take your spin program all week long and end up paying a DER test pilot gobs of money. I think that airplane had a different cowling on it. We talked about that before, CJ. I don't know what the cowling looked like on the 300, but I did a lot of the cooling tests on that particular airplane. So that wasn't easy, and I told you to stay away from the round bullet cowls.
Yep.
They look pretty maybe, but they're notoriously bad news.
That's going to be an interesting conversation. I'm dying to dive into it, but I know we'll be going until 10 at night. Go ahead. Just a quick, Fred Soaring, go ahead and your hand's up and jump in with your question, and then I'll get to some others in the chat window.
So real quick for John, do you happen to know anything about the RPM limitation on the twins? And then the question will go into the Miller conversion from there, if you're familiar.
No, I'm not, but I do know that some of the arc and the tachometer might be marked yellow.
Yeah.
And that's a propeller. That's not an engine problem. That's a propeller problem.
Okay. It's interesting because mine on the panel, I've only had this a couple of years. Mine on the panel it's got the Miller conversion with the 200 horse and the turbo normalization. But on the panel, it's marked as 2100 to 2350. But in the paperwork, I'm finding it looks like 2000. Somebody's pencil whipped it. And it says 2000 to 2350. So I need I'm trying to find somebody that's more knowledgeable on that, and I figured I'd give you a try. Thank you.
Well, Hartzell Propeller would be probably where you need to start because they do propeller vibration survey for every installation.
Okay.
And if you ever saw there's a video out someplace of when they do a propeller vibration survey with like a scope where they can sync the propeller with the flash on the camera. And you'd be surprised how many modes the propeller goes through. And you let it in that range for a while, you're going to be breaking the propeller off.
Yeah, I have some background with that, with the gas turbine engines and balancing them and the vibration modes and so forth. But I appreciate the heads up on Hartzell. I'll try to get hold of them, see what they have to say. Thank you.
Super.
This is great. Other people just posting in that they've visited the Piper Museum and it's amazing. So lots of, John, whatever you've done, you've created a magical experience for so many of us. Another question, was it the flood of 1972?
Yeah.
Was the flood that bad, or was it really a Piper corporate decision not to continue the Comanche line?
No, that
If
had
you can
nothing to
say.
do with it. Had nothing to do with it. We had 2 feet of water on the second floor of the museum. Flood stage at Lock Haven was 32 feet. So that puts 32 feet on Main Street. Well, about 14 or 15 feet on Main Street. It's 32 feet from the river stage is normal. And I was there. Fortunately, I lived up on top of a pretty good sized hill and I had a boat. So anyway, when the water was up in the Piper complex, my brother and I went down in the boat and we circled around and couldn't imagine what was going to happen. But after the flood, the Piper cleaned up, and that was the loss of the Comanche, though. They scrapped the tooling and everything on the Comanche. I know that most of the tooling for the Comanche and the single engine Comanche went to the local junkyard. And the guy used cutting torches and he cut up all the big jigs and fixtures and the form blocks and everything. So that was the end of the Comanche.
Oh man, I had heard.
Yeah. Well, they were going to keep the Arapaho because the Arapaho was in engineering at that time. And I know that the Arapaho was part of the disaster. It went down the drain too.
Oh boy.
So, now a corporate decision was made, well, with the fight between Chris Kraft and Banger Puna and Lear Siegler and everybody under the sun and all the lawyers and everything, and Piper decided to go bankrupt. And that's what happened about 1981 or 82. The writing was on the wall. And by 84, they closed Lock Haven. So that was the end of Piper Aircraft, Lock Haven.
Thank you, John.
That is too bad. I had heard that. Thank you for explaining that. I had actually heard differently that the tooling had been warehoused for a while and later on was.
That would be the Navajo.
Okay. And that was it. So during bankruptcy, they kept the Vero Beach facility and closed Lock Haven in 81 or 82?
They closed the 3 factories in Lock Haven in 84. And everything we had in Lock Haven, we put into trailer trucks and they took it to Lakeland because Lakeland was producing Navajos. They started Navajo production in 78 in Lakeland, Florida. And that was a stink with the Lock Haven Union. So anyway, what we're supposed to do is wake up the union in Lock Haven so they behave themselves. So then they said, well, we'll be nice to you. We'll give you the Tomahawk. So they gave us a Tomahawk and then left us continue to build, I think we continued to build Aztecs and the Tomahawks and the Cheyennes. We're still building Cheyennes. But
that must have been quite something.
Yep, that's where it all went. And then 6 months after that, Piper decided to hunker down in Vero. I don't know what happened. Everything was in Lakeland. I presume it was cut up or scrapped. Now they gave us an awful lot of the engineering drawings. We don't have the Navajo drawings, but we have all the stick and rag airplane drawings. We have tri-pacer. We have a lot of the design drawings for the Navajo, but we don't have production drawings for the Navajo. But we have several 4-drawer cabinet, well, flat drawing file cabinets full of Piper original drawings.
Wow. And when we come to the museum, can we make an appointment and start looking at some of the drawings? Is there a process to do that?
Oh, we can take care of you.
What about Comanche drawings?
I have not seen any, but they might be there. But see, I think Piper still owns a type certificate for the Comanche.
That's our understanding as well.
Well, that's a registered owner. And you know, the sad thing is the FAA says that if you own a type certificate, you're responsible for that airplane as long as there's any of them out there. And the problem is, if you need a Comanche part, you call up Piper and the response has to be, oh, that part's on back order. And you won't ever get it. But you
Thought it
know,
was after
you'd like to have landing gears or something like that? Well, you're not going to get a Piper aircraft.
I thought it was 14 years after the last one was out of production.
I think anybody who owns a type certificate from even, let's say, J3, if they still own the type certificate of that airplane, they're responsible for the maintenance of airworthiness of that airplane. Now, they did sell the spray plane to a company in South America, and they're building the spray planes. I think both the big one and the small one. But I don't think they've ever sold any of the type certificates. I know there's people been after the Navajo type certificate and some of those, and they won't sell them. Now, I know that what you might be thinking about is you can't be sued.
Right.
Well,
the 1994, there was a 1994 act, the Aviation Revitalization Act, and it terminated liability at 18 years.
Right. That's what they did. It's a termination of liability. And see, Piper in, I don't know, I'm guessing 85 or 86, when they filed for bankruptcy, they reorganized as the new Piper Aircraft Corporation. And a lot of our advertising we got from Florida, the brochures, there's a little word, the new, and then the big letters, Piper Aircraft Corporation. And I believe maybe 3 years ago, Piper filed to take the name of Piper Aircraft Corporation back. But I know they're operating under the name of Piper Aircraft Corporation. They dropped the name, the new Piper Aircraft. But liability, yes, you're right. That act limited liability, because we had 115,000 airplanes out there somewhere, either in junk piles or flying. And I spent a lot of time on products, for liability cases. And you go to sleep and fly into a mountain, and you're Piper's fault. It's Lycoming's fault, the radio manufacturer's fault, Hartzell Propeller's fault. So they get the old deep pockets out there, and some smart lawyer is going to fix your wagon. And then the wagon starts at $5 million. So, well, you ought to you read up sometime on the Twin Comanche lawsuit, class action lawsuit. That was a classic. That almost put Piper out of business right there.
What happened?
Well, the lawyers got together and said the Twin Comanche has a stall spin accident, was accident prone. And they call it stability and control. Well, that's when they came up with the PA-39 to try to eliminate the critical engine on the Twin Comanches. And then I understand the reason the PA-40 was eliminated was it's an admission of guilt. So if the lawyer says, well, you guys are developing the PA-40, that means that every PA-30 and 39 out there, you knew there was something the matter with it. So the lawyers at Piper got together and says, wait a minute, we don't want to admit guilt. So anyway, it automatically won a whole bunch of class action lawsuits against the Twin Comanche for the last 25 years. I worked there and I spent some time with the lawyers and I picked up a few crashes in airplanes and stuff. But I was fairly close to products liability because I ended up going to court and swearing up and down there was nothing wrong with our airplane. But I've told you this before is if you have an accident and you have some relative sitting there that lost grandpa or lost dad, the jury's going to say, aha, Piper's fault, and it's over.
Sure.
The jury says guilty. There's nothing you can do about that.
Right.
Sometime you want to talk about that, I'll tell you all about law of products liability in the aviation business. It's really bad.
Yeah, it's interesting. I won't stay too long, but some of you may have seen that I just posted an analysis that the Aviation Revitalization Act of '94 eliminated manufacturing liability, but it had to go somewhere. And so it went to FBOs, particularly to maintenance shops and to owners. And
that's right. That's where it trickled down to right there. And I'll tell you, every gear up landing that they ever made in a Comanche or an Aztec or whatever, they sued Piper Aircraft for it. And we paid for many an airplane.
Yeah. I think that those lessons are very interesting and definitely worth having a ComancheZOOM about, because it becomes part of a history that otherwise we don't really know about. It's been long enough that a lot of us are new owners and new to airplane ownership. So I think that I'd like to pull the group, but I'd really like to do that interview with you. Some other questions that have come up include, let's see, did you mention a ram cowl?
No, but I'm familiar with it.
Can you talk to us a little bit about the theory of it?
Well, the whole theory of engine cooling is the delta pressure across the engine.
Yep.
When Lycoming tests an engine, they put it in an engine stand. They have a great big hood that goes over top of the engine and a big fan, and they blow it straight down over. They don't take it in the front. They blow it right straight down over, and they measure the differential pressure from the top to the bottom of the engine. And that's what they tell you need to have to cool the engine. And it's really hard to get air in the front end and turn it 90 degrees and then suck it out the bottom to get that differential. And the scoop that's on the Comanche is, I would say it's pretty close to being the best you can get. And all these exotic things, like I told you, I worked on the Turbo Lance. That was supposed to be the salvation of the Piper Lance, Cherokee Lance. And they put that thing on there, and within a year and a half, I got phone calls from everywhere. What are you going to do about it? The engine is so hot that I can't do anything about it. They said that the top cowling was fiberglass, and if after a nice long, they started calling it the turbo hibachi. So you put a turkey in the front baggage compartment and fly for 2 hours. The turkey's done when you got there. So anyway, that was really bad. So I ended up getting an STC to put louvers in the top cowl to let the air out the top. So anyway, I have a lot of experience with that airplane. And it was they had a lot of engineers studying to get the differential pressure just right and all this kind of stuff. It ended up being a conventional cooling like you have on your Comanches, probably the best. So I wouldn't mess with it if I had a Comanche.
Well, I have to say our engines are known for going well past TBO. So
that's right. And like I told you, it's nice to have an exhaust gas temperature measurement in there. And I tell you that you can mess around with the fuel injectors and with the baffles. One of the best things to do is take that top cowl off that, or open the cowling, and make sure all the baffles are glued so that you don't have any baffles blowing out. If you have baffles blowing out, it's going to be hot.
Okay, so we should make sure that our soft baffles
are right. Make sure when you put the cowling lid down, the cowling side cowls down, that will visualize the pressurizing the top of the engine. And so you want those baffles, when they're installed, to lay up against the cowling on the inside,
Right.
and that none of them are loose or blowing through. So.
Yep, and
that's
that'll
the first
keep-
thing-
yep.
That's the first thing we look at when somebody's complaining about a hot engine. If it's a
And
factory
what
engine.
should we use to miter or glue our soft baffles so that we're not having air leakage that's reducing our cooling? What's the
Okay,
right stuff to
Piper
use?
used? Piper used cement called EC 847.
EC
brown glue.
847.
Yeah, it's 3M product. And it's a brown glue. It's a contact glue. You just smear it on both sides of the baffle material. And hold it together with a couple clothespins till it gets dry. But don't, I mean, I've seen people take an RTV and smear it all over the inside of it. It's awful, and it just doesn't do anything.
And Hans
Biobond?
Newbert. Oh, go ahead.
Is that like Pliobond?
Oh, I don't know what that is.
It's an aviation actually approved bonding thing. If you
Yeah,
look it
that's all
up,
right.
you buy an aircraft spruce. It works really well. So I'm wondering if that's close to it.
I don't know. All I do, I know what the guys at Piper had a little bucket of EC 847 on every toolbox of Piper aircraft. And that's what they use. They took it on their car, they use it in their house, they use it on everything. But it's a really super glue. But you gotta let it get tacky on both sides before you stick it together.
That is probably in today's world. I'm telling you, because we use it. We actually use it when we take off and we put the O-ring back onto the prop. That's what we use, and it doesn't help it, so it stops the leaking. You know, when you go to put that thing back on, because you know you have to stretch the hell out of it, get it onto the
I
engine.
know, put some oil on it in a plastic bag. That's what everybody else does.
If you put Pliobond in there, that helps, so it stops the leaking too, and it doesn't do anything. But I'm sure that's what it is today, because it's the same thing. You have to let it tack, and don't just put it on, and you got to walk away for like 15-20 minutes. And then
Yeah,
come
that's
back.
right. Get good tacky. It
That's
doesn't
what
even
it
really
is.
have to be wet to your hands.
Yep.
When you put your finger on it, it's a little tacky. And
Yep.
when you put it together, it's going to stay there. You'll get a screwdriver to get it off of it.
I just put my gammy injector tags and everything on my cylinder heads, and I use Pliobond. That shit ain't ever coming off unless I get a hammer to it.
All right. All right. Well, the secret glue at Piper's EC 847. They had another name for it, but I'm not going to tell you what it was. It's a little
Oh,
obscene.
you have to tell us. We're all pilots. We can handle it.
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
It comes out of a
You're too
pigeon.
much.
Piper had a nickname for everything like that. And they, like I said, it comes out of a pigeon.
Okay, I'm going to have to interrupt this real briefly here because I need to get out of here and go start saving this recording. It will be available, I hope, tomorrow morning on the website. I did have to bring my other computer with me. I have yet to see if that's going to work out here. But we'll get on the website for tomorrow morning. I will also get the invite or the registration for Sentimental Journey Saturday the 26th up there on the website too, so you can check in to go ahead and go for that. So with that, this is Pete Morse. I'm going to end the recording, and you guys can keep going with the ComancheZOOM. Good luck.